On the day of the divorce, when I thought I had lost everything, I accidentally found her old phone. She accused me of cheating, but it turned out everything was the other way around. I thought you'd never find out. Her words that shattered me completely. Now I'm ready for revenge. But what happens next? Everything is just beginning. The moment Lisa accused me of cheating, everything I knew about my life, my marriage, my future, seemed to crumble into dust. I remember how her words hit me, like a slap that resonated deep inside, leaving a sting I couldn't shake. It was a Thursday evening, just like any other. Or so I thought. I had come home from work, tired but ready to unwind. But instead of the usual greeting from Lisa, I was met with a silence that felt too heavy. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her back to me, her phone in hand. It was the kind of silence you feel deep in your bones, the kind you know is about to break with something devastating. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Her voice was low but steady, almost mechanical in its anger. I froze, my heart slamming in my chest. I dropped my briefcase on the floor, the sound of it hitting the tiles too loud in the otherwise silent room. My mind raced, trying to figure out what she was talking about. "What are you talking about, Lisa?" I asked, my voice betraying my confusion. She didn't look at me. Her fingers were wrapped around her phone, her eyes glued to the screen as if reading from it. Or perhaps studying something she couldn't quite believe herself. She muttered to herself, her words not meant for me, but I heard them clearly enough. "How could you do this to me?" "Lisa," I said again, my voice softer this time, trying to calm the storm brewing in the space between us. "What's going on?" Finally she turned to face me. Her eyes were wide, full of something I couldn't identify at first. It wasn't just anger, it was betrayal. "I know what you've been doing. I know you've been seeing someone else. I've seen the messages." Her voice trembled, her breath catching as she spoke. I stood there, dumbfounded, feeling my legs go weak. "What are you talking about? I haven't been with anyone, Lisa. You know me better than that." Her lips curled into a bitter smile, one that was unfamiliar, like she'd been rehearsing it for days. "I know what I saw, I know what I read, the texts, the phone calls. You thought I wouldn't notice?" My mind was a blur, struggling to process the accusation. The thought of being caught in a lie, in something that wasn't even true, felt surreal. "Lisa, please, there's nothing. You're mistaken. What are you talking about?" She didn't respond. Instead, she shoved her phone in my face. There, on the screen, was a conversation between me and someone I didn't recognize. The messages were vague, the names unlisted, but the tone was enough to leave a pit in my stomach. I could barely breathe. This isn't me. It must be a mistake. Someone else is using my number." But Lisa wasn't listening. She was already on her feet, pacing the room, tears in her eyes. "How could you do this? After everything we've built? Our family? Our life?" Her voice cracked with the weight of the words, her chest rising and falling with each ragged breath. I tried to reach for her, to take her hands, but she recoiled, her eyes filled with fury and pain. "I don't want your touch, not after what you've done. I don't want to hear your excuses." Her words were a hammer to my heart. I wanted to scream that this wasn't true, to convince her that everything she was seeing was wrong. But the more I spoke, the more she pulled away, her mind already made up. "You're lying!" I shouted, feeling the surge of panic rise within me. "Lisa, you've got it all wrong, I swear to you." But she only shook her head, her lips trembling. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore. I don't even know who you are." The silence that followed was suffocating. I watched as she dropped the phone onto the table, her hands clenching into fists. The accusation, so absurd and impossible to swallow, lingered in the air between us like a toxic cloud. Maybe I should leave, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but the finality of it hit me harder than anything she had said so far. Maybe we're done. I'm done with this. My stomach dropped. Number, please. Lisa, don't say that. Don't go. We can work through this. I'll do anything. But she was already backing away, her eyes avoiding mine as she spoke the words that shattered everything. I can't live like this anymore. I don't deserve to be lied to. I'm done. You're not the man I married. The front door clicked shut behind her with a finality that reverberated through my entire body. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, the weight of her accusation settling on my chest like a stone. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? I collapsed onto the couch, my hands shaking as I ran them through my hair. My mind raced, trying to piece together what had just happened. My heart was still pounding, the words cheating and liar echoing in my ears. I thought I had done everything right. I had worked hard for our life together, for our family. I had never cheated on Lisa, not once. So how had she come to believe this? How had she convinced herself of something that wasn't true? I felt a deep, suffocating panic wash over me. The thought of losing her, of losing my family, it was too much to bear. Everything I had worked for, everything I loved, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I tried calling her, sending texts, but she didn't answer. Not a single word from her all night. And in the days that followed, the silence was unbearable. Every moment without her felt like a betrayal in itself. I couldn't shake the thought that I was losing everything, that I might not be able to get it back. I didn't know how this had happened, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't just let it end like this. I had to find a way to prove my innocence. I had to fix this. The days that followed were like a slow spiral into madness. Lisa wouldn't talk to me. She wouldn't answer my calls or my messages. The house, once filled with the sound of our kids' laughter and the warmth of evening dinners, now felt hollow, oppressive. Every corner of the space seemed to echo with her absence. And every second without her voice, her touch, it ate away at me. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't just sit back and watch my life unravel, not when I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. So, I began my own investigation. I had to clear my name. I had to find something, anything, that would prove to Lisa I was telling the truth. It started with my phone, the one she had shown me the messages on. But as I scrolled through my texts and calls, I found nothing out of the ordinary. No hidden conversations, no secret numbers, no illicit messages. But still, doubt gnawed at me. Was it possible that I missed something? Was there a message, a detail I overlooked? I could feel the pressure mounting, but every time I looked at the screen, I saw only the same thing. Nothing. I didn't want to admit it, but the idea that Lisa might be right started to creep into my mind. What if she was seeing something I wasn't? What if I was blind to something right in front of me? I needed answers, so I went to the one place I thought might offer a clue. The trash. It was a desperate move, but I was desperate. I dug through the garbage, hoping to find some shred of evidence. Old receipts, discarded notes, anything that might explain what was happening. I spent hours sifting through it, my hands growing numb, but came up empty-handed. Nothing. And yet, the more I searched, the more I felt like I was being watched. Every time I would step into the living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out of place. I'd catch myself scanning the room almost instinctively, as if there was a hidden camera or a recording device watching my every move, but there was nothing, just silence. Just the weight of Lisa's absence. It wasn't just the lack of evidence that bothered me. It was the way she had turned everything against me. Every conversation we had now was about my betrayal. Every word she said felt like an accusation, an indictment. She made me feel guilty for things I hadn't done. And when I tried to explain myself, to remind her of the life we'd built together, she only pushed me further away. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to know what she was hiding. I had to get answers from her, no matter the cost. I tried calling again, but no luck. I texted her, begging her to talk to me. Nothing. Frustrated, I turned to the only thing I could think of. I had to check her things. Maybe, just maybe, I could find something that could explain this madness. It felt wrong, like a violation of trust, but the desperation inside me overwhelmed any sense of right or wrong. I stood outside the door to our bedroom, staring at it, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I had never done anything like this before, but I needed the truth. I needed to understand why she had done this to me. I pushed open the door. The room felt different. It was quieter, colder, like a stranger's space now. The bed we used to share seemed distant, like it no longer belonged to us. My eyes scanned the room, the closet, the drawers, the nightstand. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe a sign, something that would make sense of all of this. Then I saw it. Her old phone. It was tucked away in the corner of her drawer, almost hidden beneath a pile of papers and receipts. It looked old, outdated, like she hadn't used it in months. But there it was, sitting innocently, waiting for me to find it. My breath caught in my throat as I picked it up. Should I look through it? Was I crossing a line? Part of me told me to put it back, to walk away. But the other part, the part of me that had been consumed by confusion and fear, wanted to know the truth. I needed to know what Lisa was hiding. What if there was something there? What if I could finally prove my innocence? I turned on the phone. The screen lit up, and I hesitated. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop myself. I unlocked it with a quick swipe, finding the old messages. I began scrolling, my heart pounding as I read through them. There was nothing at first, just old conversations with friends, family, even some work-related chats. But then I came across a string of messages that stopped me cold. They were from a man, someone I didn't recognize. The messages were brief, but the tone was unmistakable. Flirtatious, intimate, secretive. I felt the world around me spin. My blood ran cold as I read through the messages. They spoke of secret meetings, of rendezvous, of things I couldn't even bring myself to process. Lisa had been hiding this from me. She had been living a lie far worse than the one she had accused me of. It wasn't just my betrayal she was hiding, it was her own. The truth hit me like a freight train. I felt dizzy, nauseous, sick to my stomach. All the pain she had put me through, the accusations, the lies, the distance, it had all been a smokescreen. She had been hiding her own secrets, and now I had the proof. I could feel the weight of the phone in my hand, its revelation heavy and suffocating. But with it came something else. A sense of power, a sense of clarity. The doubts that had once plagued me now dissolved. I wasn't the guilty one here. I wasn't the cheater. She was. The weight of what I had discovered was too much to bear. For a moment, I just stood there, holding her phone, my mind reeling. It felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. The lies she had told, the accusations she had thrown at me, all of it had been a cover for the truth that I had never imagined. I stared at the phone in my hands, my pulse pounding in my ears. The messages from the man she'd been seeing were all there, clear as day. She had been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and I had been the one paying the price, drowning in guilt for something I hadn't even done. She'd made me feel like the villain, and now I saw her for what she truly was. But what was I supposed to do with this? What now? My mind raced as I tried to process the revelation. I thought about Lisa, her face when she had accused me, the hurt in her eyes, the venom in her voice. I had believed her. I had tried so hard to convince myself that I was the one at fault, but I wasn't. I never had been. She was the one who had betrayed me. She had built this house of lies, and now I was standing in the ruins of it. I felt a wave of anger crash over me. Anger at her for what she had done. and at myself for not seeing it sooner. How could I have been so blind? How had I let her manipulate me like this? I dropped the phone onto the bed, pacing the room in agitation. My chest tightened, and a knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a complete and utter violation of everything I believed in. My trust, my love, our family. I had been the one standing on the edge of losing everything, but now the truth had flipped the narrative. Lisa was the one who had already shattered everything. I felt sick. I felt used. But what was I supposed to do with this new reality? How could I confront her with the truth? I had always prided myself on being calm, level-headed, rational. But now, everything felt like it was falling apart. How could I go to her and say, "I know what you've been doing"? How could I accuse her of something that, until a few minutes ago, I hadn't even believed possible? I could feel the conflict raging inside me. Part of me wanted to expose her, to lay bare her lies and show her for the hypocrite she was. Part of me wanted to take the information I had found and confront her with it, to demand answers. But another part of me knew that if I did that, the fallout would be catastrophic. What would that mean for the kids? For the life we had built? Could I really tear everything down, even if she had betrayed me? It was all too much. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I couldn't let her walk away with the upper hand, pretending that I was the one who had destroyed our marriage. She had lied, and now I had the power to expose her. But the question remained: how far was I willing to go? The sound of the front door opening broke my thoughts. I froze. My heart raced in my chest. Lisa was home. I hadn't even heard her car pull into the driveway. I glanced at the phone again, the screen glowing with the proof of her infidelity. I felt a surge of panic. Was she going to walk in here? Act like everything was normal? Was she going to pretend like nothing had changed? The nerve of her! I could hear her footsteps in the hall, growing closer. There was no time left to think. I had to make a decision. The door creaked open. Lisa stepped into the room, her face tense, eyes guarded. She seemed different, more distant somehow. "Are you just going to keep ignoring me?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Why won't you talk to me?" I stood there, my mind racing, the truth sitting in my chest like a rock. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. I had to tell her. I had to confront her. But how? She stepped into the room, her gaze landing on the phone on the bed. Her face tightened. "What's this?" she asked, her voice laced with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Fear? I forced myself to speak, though my voice was hoarse, tight. "You want to know what this is, Lisa?" I held up the phone, watching her face shift, the shock that passed across her features like a crack in a carefully constructed mask. "This is the truth about what you've been doing behind my back." Her eyes flicked from the phone to me, the panic flashing across her face before she quickly masked it with a lie. "What are you talking about?" she said, taking a step back. "You're going to believe something you found on an old phone? That's ridiculous." "No, Lisa. What's ridiculous is you accusing me of cheating when you've been the one doing it all along." My voice shook with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I've seen the messages. I know everything now. Don't even try to deny it." Her eyes widened, her lips parted, but no words came out. She just stood there, silent, like a deer caught in headlights. I took a step forward, the air thick with tension. "How long were you planning on keeping this from me, Lisa? How long were you going to let me suffer, thinking I was the one at fault? Was this your plan all along?" She opened her mouth, but the words never came. She just stood there, the truth settling in like a cold breeze between us. I could feel the anger surging in me, but I didn't want to lose control. I had to be calculated, precise. I had to make her see that this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. She had destroyed me, and now I had to return the favor, not with cruelty, but with truth. "I'm done," I said, my voice hard, steady. You can't lie to me anymore. You're the one who's been unfaithful. Not me. Not anymore. The room felt smaller as the silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Lisa was still staring at me, unable to speak, unable to justify her actions. And in that silence, I realized something. It wasn't just about proving my innocence anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. Not without a fight. And as I stood there, staring her down, I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The silence in the room was unbearable, suffocating. Lisa stood there, frozen, like she didn't know what to do with herself. She wasn't saying anything, wasn't defending herself. Her eyes darted between me and the phone, but there was no more denial, no more excuses. The guilt hung in the air, thick and undeniable. I waited. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. The truth was out now, and it was hers to own, not mine. Say something, I finally said, my voice low, steady. Why don't you defend yourself? Or is the guilt too much for you to bear? She flinched at my words, her face reddening with shame. It's not what you think, she whispered, her voice cracking. She was trying to hold it together, but I could see the cracks forming. She wasn't the confident, accusing woman from earlier. Now she was small, fragile, and lost. I took a deep breath, refusing to let myself show any weakness. You don't get to lie to me anymore, Lisa. You don't get to destroy everything we've built, to accuse me of things I didn't do, just to cover up your own mess. I've seen it all, the texts, the calls. You're the one who's been unfaithful, not me. Her lips trembled, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked away, her gaze drifting to the floor as if the weight of her guilt was too much to bear. I watched her, trying to understand why she'd done this, why she'd been so cruel, so deceitful. And then I remembered something that had been eating away at me for weeks, the way she'd been so distant, the way she'd always been busy, always too tired or too busy to talk. The late nights, the sudden trips, the unexplained absences. She had been so careful, so controlled, and I had been so trusting, so naive. She had played me for a fool. But now the truth was laid bare. She had been seeing someone else for who knew how long. She had been lying to my face, accusing me of betrayal, while she was the one breaking our vows. And she had been doing it with the man in those messages, the one she'd been hiding from me. I looked down at the phone again, the evidence staring back at me like a damning confession. The messages were clear, explicit. She had been planning to leave me. She had been setting up her escape for months, and I had no idea. All this time, I thought I was the one on the edge of losing everything, when in reality she had already checked out. There was a part of me, a small, vulnerable part, that wanted to scream, to shout at her for what she'd done, to make her feel the pain I had been carrying. But I kept myself in check. I couldn't let her have that power over me anymore. I wasn't going to let her see me break. I stepped back, keeping my eyes locked on her. "You've been lying to me this whole time," I said softly, as if the words themselves were too heavy to carry. "You've been playing me, Lisa, and I've been so stupid, so blind to it all." She didn't respond, and that silence cut deeper than any words could. She had no defense, no explanation that could justify the betrayal. She had nothing left to say. I felt my hands shaking. The truth was out. It was right there in front of me, and yet the anger inside me hadn't fully dissipated. I was still furious. Furious at her for making me feel like I was the one at fault. Furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. But at the same time, a strange clarity began to settle in. This wasn't just about proving that I wasn't the one in the wrong. It wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about taking back control of my life. I hadn't just been wronged. I had been manipulated, and I had let it happen. But not anymore. I could feel the power shift within me. I was no longer the man who stood in the shadow of doubt. I was the one holding the truth now. The truth was my weapon, and I would use it to break free. I walked over to the bed, picking up the phone again. I looked at her, my gaze unwavering. "I'm done, Lisa. I don't know what you thought was going to happen, but it's over. I'm done being the villain in your story." She looked up at me then, tears brimming in her eyes. She opened her mouth, but the words never came. What could she possibly say? What could she say to explain this? I shook my head. "You had a chance to come clean. You had a chance to be honest with me, to save this. But you chose the easy way out. You chose to lie, to manipulate. And now you'll have to live with that." I walked toward the door, but then I stopped, turning back to her one last time. "The truth always comes out, Lisa. And now you're going to have to face it." And with that, I left the room, my heart pounding, my mind still reeling from everything that had just happened. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her tear me down anymore. I was done. The phone was no longer in my hands, but the power of the truth I had uncovered would stay with me, guiding me forward. It was the only thing I needed now, the truth, and whatever came next, I would be ready for it. This wasn't just about revealing her lies. This was about my own freedom. And that, I realized, was something I had to reclaim for myself. The days after the confrontation were a blur. The house felt empty, hollow, like the walls themselves knew something had shattered. I moved through each room like a ghost, trying to make sense of the life that was slipping away from me. A life I thought I had known. But nothing felt familiar anymore. Lisa didn't speak to me much after that day. She avoided my gaze, stayed in her room, or took long walks outside. I didn't care. She had no power over me anymore. The truth was out, and I had already made my peace with it, or at least I was trying to. The silence between us was deafening, but it wasn't the kind of silence that came from comfort. No, this silence was the kind that came from broken trust, from the weight of a betrayal so deep it left no room for conversation. It was strange, though. Part of me had expected anger, shouting, maybe even an attempt at reconciliation. But Lisa didn't fight back anymore. She didn't try to explain herself. I don't know if it was guilt or the realization that she had lost, but there was nothing left to say. I spent the next few days trying to figure out my next steps. The divorce papers were on the table, ready to be signed, but a part of me hesitated. It wasn't because I wanted to save our marriage. No, that part of me had died the moment I had discovered the truth. But there was something I still hadn't done, something that was gnawing at me, something I couldn't ignore. Revenge. I wasn't proud of it, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction that filled me as I thought about it. I had been the one wronged, the one who had been humiliated, made to feel small and guilty for something I didn't do. Now it was my turn to take control of the narrative. It was my turn to show her that the truth could be just as powerful as her lies. I sat down one evening with the phone in my hands again, reviewing the messages. The man she had been seeing, Jason was his name, was a coward. He was hiding behind a mask of sweetness and empty promises. But his words betrayed him, the way he had spoken about Lisa, the way he had planned their future together. It was clear that he was just as manipulative as she was. He had played his part in her betrayal, and now I had the opportunity to return the favor. It wasn't just about hurting her. It wasn't about causing her pain. It was about reclaiming my dignity. It was about showing her, and him, that I wasn't the one to be messed with. I had been manipulated and deceived, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I drafted the text. To Jason, I know everything. I have the evidence, the messages you thought would stay hidden. And now, I'm giving you the chance to do the right thing. Leave my wife alone, or I will make sure everyone knows what you've been doing. I have all the proof I need. Don't think you can run from this. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even vengeful in the way that I had originally imagined. It was simply a warning, a declaration that I would no longer be the victim. I hit send. It wasn't long before Jason called. I let it ring for a few moments, letting the tension build. I didn't pick up right away. I wanted him to sweat, to feel the weight of what was coming. When I finally answered, I could hear the nervousness in his voice. "What the hell is this?" he asked, his words laced with fear. "It's the truth, Jason," I said, keeping my voice calm, controlled. "I know what you've been doing with my wife, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." There was silence on the other end. Then he stammered, I don't know what you're talking about. You're making a mistake." "Am I?" I replied, my tone cool, unwavering. "You've been playing both of us, but now it's over. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you to stay away from my family. You've already ruined enough." He didn't say anything for a long time, and when he finally did, it was with the resignation of someone who knew they were caught. I'll leave her alone," he muttered, clearly defeated. "I didn't mean for this to go so far. It was a mistake." I didn't believe him, but it didn't matter. I wasn't doing this for him to feel guilty. I was doing it for me. I hung up the phone and exhaled deeply. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long seemed to lift. Just a little. It wasn't over. Not completely, but I had taken the first step. I had reclaimed my power. The next day, I filed the divorce papers. Lisa didn't fight it. She didn't even argue. She just signed the papers with the same cold indifference she had shown for the past few days. I didn't expect any apology, any remorse. The truth was out, and she had no choice but to face it. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, I felt something that I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of liberation. The chains were gone. The lies were behind me. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I wasn't the victim anymore. I had taken back control. And as I drove home, I realized that the hardest part wasn't exposing Lisa's betrayal. It wasn't even confronting the man she had cheated with. No, the hardest part was allowing myself to walk away. To accept that this chapter of my life was over. That I had the power to move on, to rebuild, to find a new path. I wasn't broken. I wasn't defeated. I was free. And that freedom, the knowledge that I could finally move on, was the sweetest form of revenge. And as I thought about what lay ahead, I knew one thing for sure. I would be okay. Better than okay. I was finally in control of my own story.